Good morning, colleagues. Ado yat benenana. Ado kodon hitli ho yahaki. Ado bish pada saane tani kliniki yat nana kune yahanane je. We are on our 4th day of our Oversight Budget Special Meeting. Today is August 18th. And colleagues, may you press your roll call button. I do believe we have a quorum. Thank you, colleagues, for pressing your roll call button. We do have 13 council delegates here on the floor within the council chambers, and we will exit out of recess and reconvene at 9:32 a.m. Colleagues, this is a short recap. Yesterday we did still on legislation 0198-23. We were still getting reports from the executive offices regarding their 2024 comprehensive budget. So we left off at that, and there were many questions and responses made. Colleagues, before I turn over the floor, the gavel to Chair Eugenio Charles Newton, I also want to say thank you for being here with us this morning. Today is a very special day for our council. Today, 100 years ago, on August 18, 1923, was officially the first order of business with our Navajo Nation Council when it was established. So today is the 100th day, or 100th year anniversary. So exactly on this day. So colleagues, thank you for being here today and helping us all make history today, especially during this Naa'bik'iyati committee meeting. As you can see on the north side of the chambers, our first chairman, Henry Chi Dodge, if you had an opportunity to visit our council chambers, and it starts off from pre-settlement and it goes all the way around. At our door we do have our Treaty of 1868, and then here on the north side is highlighting when our official form of governments was established, even though we know we did have traditional forms of government. But on August 18th, 1923, that's when the Navajo Nation Council was established. So thank you, colleagues, for being here today and celebrating that history. So eshin koto e benatan kitsildo benashnane kato le kon khalchne bade idon kisokeda eshin e koto e bade ido le. So with that, really want to thank each and every one of you for celebrating this day with each and every one of you. So at this time, I would like to turn the gavel over to Honorable Eugenio Charles Newton, and she will preside over for the rest of the day, and we will continue with our agenda.
Good morning, colleagues. We'll go ahead and we will proceed back with legislation. Sorry, let me change out my glasses. Legislation number 0198-23, which is the fiscal year 2024 budget for the Navajo Nation Executive Offices. I believe that yesterday we didn't have anybody in the queue, but we did lose quorum. Today we do have quorum, so thank you all for being here this morning, and let's get this budget done. So at this time, Speaker, I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to you. Maybe you can just summarize very quickly what we're doing here today, what the legislation is, and then we'll go ahead and then proceed with questions from your colleagues. So, Speaker, the floor is yours.
Shanella Pro Tem Speaker, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the floor rules and to do a consent agenda on both of the legislation. Pro Tem Speaker?
Motion made by Chair Vince James to do a consent agenda for legislation number 0198-23 and legislation number 0195-23, second by Vice Chair Carl Slater. Committee members, this is a motion for a consent agenda. We are here at Naa'bik'iyati. I believe that in the past there has been motions for a consent agenda at committee. And I'm looking through my rules to see what the rules are for consent agenda, although it's not listed in the committee rules of order. In the past, this council, as well as the 24th Navajo Nation Council, has recognized consent agendas at the committee level. So since it's not written within the committee rules of order and we don't have our Chief Legislative Counsel here in the chambers with us, I'm going to go ahead and if there are no disputes, I'll go ahead and follow the rules for consent agenda for the council rules of order. I stand corrected. Under Rule 8 of the Committee Rules of Order, Rule 8B, it does state that the chairperson of the standing committee shall prepare and submit a proposed agenda to the committee for review and final adoption. The agenda shall allow for the inclusion of a consent schedule, which is a listing of resolutions that will likely be approved by unanimous consent of the delegates in attendance. The consent schedule shall be developed by the chairperson upon request by any delegate with appropriate exhibits, reports, and other matter available for review prior to meeting. Items shall be removed from the consent schedule on the request of any one committee member for any reason without debate. Items not removed shall be adopted by unanimous consent without amendments or debate. Removed items may be taken up either immediately after the consent schedule or placed later on the agenda at the discretion of the committee. So at this time, I believe that there is a motion made by a delegate, which the rules state that any delegate can do, and it was second. So committee members, are there any questions, any comments, or any legislations you want removed from the consent agenda at this time? Just for the record, I'm looking around the council chambers and I don't see any hands going up. I don't see anybody in the queue. Oh, we do have somebody in the queue. Delegate Slater.
That's an old one, Chair. I was trying to do a point of order because you said there wasn't a consent schedule, but you found it on 8B on page 3. So, and the consent schedule for the standing committees deviates slightly from council, but it's basically the same thing. So you can just remove me from up there.
Thank you for that, Vice Chair Slater. Committee members, you have the opportunity at this time to remove a legislation from the consent agenda. Again, I'm looking around the council chambers. I don't see any hands up, nor do I see any lights on requesting to speak. For the record, there is nobody in the queue. Okay, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to take this as no questions, no comments, or no removal for the consent agenda. Staff, can you assist us at this time with roll call vote, please? Thank you, staff, for assisting us. Colleagues, it looks like we do have a consent agenda with a motion made by Chair Vince James, second by Vice Chair Slater. The vote is 14 in favor, 0 opposed, 10 delegates who are not voting, and just for the record, none of those 10 delegates are excused at this time. So for the record, we'll go ahead and mark them all as absent for today. So with that, committee members, there was a motion made by Chair James to suspend the floor rules to do a consent agenda. That motion has passed, so now we're back to the main agenda. The agenda was motioned by Delegate George Tolth, and it was seconded by, I believe it's Speaker Seth Damon. Is that correct? The main motion, the agenda. George Tolth and Seth Damon. My apologies. The motion was made by Delegate George Tolth, second by Chair Shandine Parrish. So we'll go ahead and at this time, committee members, do we have the vote open? Do we need to do a second reading of the agenda? Okay, let's go and do a second reading of the agenda, staff. Thank you.
Pro Temp Chair, there was a consent agenda for 2 legislations listed on the agenda. Legislation 0198-23 an action relating to the Naa'bik'iyati Committee approving and recommending to the Budget and Finance Committee the fiscal year 2024 budget for the Navajo Nation, executive offices, and related matters to be included in the Navajo Nation's FY 2024 comprehensive budget. There were 3 amendments to this legislation. Amendment number 1 was a legislative concern. This was requested by Honorable Delegate George Toth. The Office of the President and Vice President, Business Unit Number 103001, in cooperation with the Navajo Hopi Land Commission Office, Business Unit Number 103003, by the end of the first quarter of FY 2024, shall take all appropriate and necessary actions to address and resolve the following. Update plans of operation for Office of the President and Vice President and Navajo Hopi Land Commission Office. By the end of the quarter noted above, the responsible entities should present a written report and a verbal report if so requested to the Naa'bik'iyati Committee regarding the completion or ongoing status of the efforts to address and resolve the above legislative concern, which report should include an explanation of any funding shortfalls, those laws, regulations, and/or policies that should be amended, or other obstacles preventing resolution of the legislative concern. Note, the Navajo Nation Council, by virtue of its legislative authority as the governing body of the Navajo Nation, may include legislative concerns in the comprehensive budget resolution that are advisory in nature and do not create any mandatory condition for the expenditure of appropriated funds. 12 NNC Section 810M. However, legislative concerns are used to measure the performance and accomplishments of programs, and any failure to comply with a legislative concern will reflect poorly on the programs expected to address or resolve the legislative concern. Furthermore, any such failure shall discourage the favorable consideration and approval of special budget allocations or supplemental appropriations requested by the programs. The second amendment was sponsored by Honorable Chair Eugenia Charles Newton. This was a budget amendment for FY 2024 from Business Unit Number 103006, Office of the First Lady, to Business Unit Number 103005, Office of the Miss Navajo. The amount was to transfer $75,000 from Office of the First Lady to Office of Miss Navajo. The third amendment was a legislative concern, and this was also requested by Honorable Chair Eugenia Charles Newton. The Office of the President and Vice President, Business Unit Number 103001, should take all appropriate and necessary actions to address and resolve the following by the end of the first quarter of 2024. Ensure that the Vice President has adequate resources and staffing to fully implement her platform and responsibilities. By the end of the quarter note above, the responsible entities should present a written report and a verbal report if so requested to the Naa'bik'iyati Committee regarding the completion or ongoing status of the efforts to address and resolve the above legislative concern, which report should include an explanation of any funding shortfalls, those laws, regulations, and/or policies that should be amended, or other obstacles preventing resolution of the legislative concern. Those are the 3 amendments for legislation number 0198-23. The second legislation in the consent agenda is legislation 0195-23, an action relating to the Naa'bik'iyati Committee approving and recommending to the Budget and Finance Committee the fiscal year 2024 budget for the Navajo Nation legislative branch and related matters to be included in the Navajo Nation FY 2024 comprehensive budget. This legislation is sponsored by Honorable Crystalline Curley and co-sponsored by Honorable Danny Simpson. Pro Temp Chair, those are the 2 legislations that are read into the record, that are part of the consent agenda.
Thank you for the reading, staff. Because it is a consent agenda, per the agenda, those are the only 2 items on the agenda, so we're just going to go straight to vote. Oh, can I get a motion? I need a motion at this time. Curtis Yanito, Delegate Yanito, can I get a second? A second, Dr. Andy Naz, Dee Dee Naz. Now we go straight to vote. Committee members, the voting has closed. We have a vote of 14 in favor, 0 opposed, 10 who are not voting. And again, for the record, the 10 delegates who are currently not voting have not been excused and are therefore absent from today's vote. Thank you, committee members. We are now at item 6 on the agenda, which is a close of the meeting. But before we call for a motion and a second to adjourn, I'd like to ask, are there any announcements at this time? Announcements, we have Delegate Norman Begay, and then I believe Vice Chair Carl, do you guys have announcements? Any announcements from committee members? Vice Chair Slater, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And thank you, colleagues, for getting business done quickly this morning. The Budget and Finance Committee is going to resume its budget negotiation meetings with programs and committee chairs. And so that's going to start at 10 in about 5 minutes. And the 4 committee members that we have here are going to make their way over there. So thank you very much, and we'll look forward to seeing programs over there.
Thank you for the announcement, Vice Chair Slater. Delegates, are there any other announcements at this time? Before I turn the floor over to Speaker, just a reminder, Chinle Central Fair is next weekend. Please email or text Speaker Curley to let her know if you are going to be in attendance. Wear your finest clothes and be ready to represent council. Speaker Curley, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pro Temp Chair. Colleagues, just a reminder, we are tentatively still on budget schedule. So thank you for doing that consent agenda this morning. We do, as a reminder, Thursday next week on the 24th, we do have a Naa'bik'iyati. And then also on Friday, the 25th, Navajo Nation Council session. Just to make sure the calendar invite were sent out. So if you do have prior plans before that, just make those arrangements. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Speaker Curley. And you did say August the 25th is council? Okay. So normally, Mr. Mitchell, we make these announcements are only available for delegates. So I'm going to go ahead and recognize you to make a quick announcement.
Although, yeah, yeah, can't get this in Kage. It's going to three afternoons. So thank you very much. 4 days. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Mitchell. Colleagues, are there any other announcements at this time? Chair Nashina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Charles New, Narashnantano Tlenigi. Tomorrow and Sunday is the Santa Fe Indian Market. A lot of our native artists, normally about 1,200 artists show up in Santa Fe at the square and different streets, so it's always a good time to go over there. So if you have time, come on out to Santa Fe Indian Market. Thank you.
Thank you for that announcement, Chair Naz. Committee members, are there any other announcements at this time? I'm not seeing any hands up. I don't see anybody in the queue. I don't see any lights on. So we're going to go ahead and at this time, I'm going to ask for a motion and a second to adjourn. Motion made by Speaker Otto So to adjourn. Can I get a second? Second made by Casey Allen Johnson. Delegate Johnson. Committee members, I don't think there's any questions, comments, or any further debate for adjournment, so we're going to go ahead and go straight to vote. Staff, can you assist us with roll call vote, please? Voting has closed. Colleagues, we have 13 in favor, 0 opposed, 11 who are not voting. So with that, colleagues, we are hereby adjourned at 10:01 a.m.